I feel it's too bad that we feel so separated from other skiers, that we are so diametrically, oh my God, you're a racer. I can't even possibly talk to you. You're not my people, you know?
He's right. Skiers, what are we doing? We've been turned on ourselves. Remember when the war used to only be between skiers and snowboarders, and that's it? The times have changed.
If you look at snowboarding as an example, a snowboarder is a snowboarder. They have this more sort of unifying mindset. The guys who are out there in the mountains don't go, oh, that stupid little street snowboarder, or that little park rat, like, oh my God, I cannot possibly associate myself with him, right? It's like, hey, bro, cool, you're in the mountains, you're into snowboarding, that's rad.
We at MTNmeister know that getting away from it all is great, as long as you make it back. With the DeLorme InReach Explorer's tracking functions and its ability to trigger an interactive SOS in an emergency, you'll be in good hands on any journey. For $35 off of your purchase, go to inreachdelorme.com and use the code MEISTER at checkout. This deal and all others are on our website on the deals page. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of MTNmeister. Today with us, we welcome Doug Bishop, who is the general manager of Newschoolers, an online community with some of the most passionate free skiers out there. Many of you have probably heard of it. Doug was an aspiring pro skier for 6 years and joined Newschoolers in the early days. Doug Bishop, welcome to MTNmeister.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
It is great to have you on the show. Normally, I'm able to find more than enough information about people online, and I was able to do that with you, but the majority of information I found was through your Newschoolers reviews. And 90% of those are not appropriate for this podcast. But the ones that are appropriate were Old, Nice, Nerdy, the face of Newschoolers. That comes from Raj or Rogge. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. R-O-G-G-E.
Rogge. Yeah, Rogge. Mike Rogge.
And then also, damn, I wish I could count as high as his karma. That came from somebody named 978. Not sure who that is. Explain the karma concept to our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, the karma concept is it's a point system on Newschoolers, and I mean it mimics a lot of like what they do at Reddit or various other social communities. Specifically, the take that we have on it is that as you contribute to the site, so whether that's reviewing gear, posting photos, posting videos, posting threads, contributing to threads, voting on threads, everything that you do on the site gives you karma points. And it's essentially a point system for all activities. And the idea is to measure who are the most positive members. Yeah. And, we've actually built that system out quite a bit. And it's something a lot of people don't understand is that as you're contributing content to the site, you start earning points and then you walk your way up. So we have paid monetization programs where we pay about 50% of the ad revenue that runs against content. So if you're, say you're posting videos, you become a producer, and we select a number of people every year based off their points to move into that position. From there, you can start to get opportunities to do custom content or shoots, or we'll pay people for certain series that they do, certain episodic type content. And then actually just this year, we hired 3 of them on staff to be our editor, photo editor, and executive producer. So
what a great recruiting tool.
Yeah, well, that's the concept. I mean, we really I've always really felt that media in skiing is a very closed, it's a closed old boys club, and that's how a lot of industry stuff works. And I know that that's kind of part of the world, but we sort of went on this crazy mission to really try and open that up, because Newschoolers has always been about the community, about the people, and about giving them a voice. So, we're trying to approach the media side of it in that same philosophy. So are you pretty proud of your karma points? Do you know how many exactly you have right now? I would have to check, to be honest with you. So the only problem is that it's a little easy for me sometimes because like maybe I'll post something on behalf of a brand or I get to leak a custom piece of information. So we actually usually, I mean, you can see us in the overall scoring, but in a lot of the, prizing and ranking and everything that we do, we take a lot of the staff names out because we sort of get an unfair advantage, to be perfectly honest. Although I admit, I was crushed the day that we changed the ranking and Schmuck beat me. So
I saw Schmuck up there. Yeah, he's at the top of a lot of the lists.
Yeah, he was our old news editor, and he deserved a ton of it. But then we actually had to move where the news was in the database, and we put it all under his name because it was a legacy system. And all of a sudden, it boosted it, and he beat me, and I cried that day.
So, is there any correlation between the Newschoolers karma and the kind of karma we're familiar with in Hinduism and Buddhism?
I mean, that like. If you could actually replicate that philosophy in mathematics, that's what we're trying to do. Because I sort of actually do believe, like I'm not much of a spiritual or religious person or anything, but karma is this one thing which I don't know really does make sense to me. That if you give to the world, that you then subsequently should receive, and we've actually tried to replicate that idea that karma scores you based on how good of a member you are.
Yeah.
Not that I think it's perfect, but that actually is exactly what we're trying to do.
Very cool. So I said early days in the beginning of the interview. You were telling me that you started or you found Newschoolers in 2001.
Yeah, it's about 2001.
How did you hear about it? Do you remember when you first heard about it?
Yeah, I was in the park trying to be an athlete, doing my thing, training or, riding or doing whatever you want to call it. I never liked calling it training because I enjoyed every last day of it. And I was with my buddy Daryl Hunt, who's now a, backwoods, backcountry touring hippie. And we were riding together and, standing there in the lift line. And I can't remember what the conversation was about, but we were just waiting for this little double chair called Badlands at Blue Mountain, Ontario. And he just said to me, "Oh, dude, have you seen newschoolers.com? It's the raddest site ever." And I was like, "Okay, cool," and I went home and I was living at the top of the mountain, and I had like a 2400 baud modem because the phone lines were crap outside of it, and so I went on to this janky little site and was like, my God, I've found Nirvana.
So how did you eventually get involved in it?
One of the great things about it, and it's been harder to capture this vibe as it's grown, but back then, like, and it still happens today, and we're trying to beef this out. But anyways, back then, one of the main things you would do is say, I went out to Tremblant to go to some competition. I don't know what it was. I mean, I used to drive out into as many of these things as I could. I had an old 78 Ford Econoline 150 with like, shag carpet ceilings and padded velour walls, like a big futon in the back. It was a nice thing, but I needed to park it somewhere. And I went on Newschoolers and, posted in I think it was the Tremblant private forums. I mean, it was just in the main forums at that time, hey, anyone got a driveway I can throw my van in? And I went up there and I met a whole group of guys. Now, Harvey, who had founded it, Matt Harvey, he founded it out of Ottawa in his bedroom. And he, I guess, knew this crew. And so I met them at this competition, didn't meet Harvey. And then I, just became friends with them, and I would go out to Tremblant occasionally. And then I was up at an event in Ottawa, which was a summer quarter pipe competition called the Snow Jam, and I was like helping shape the quarter pipe as a volunteer. Well, actually, I wasn't shaping; I was loading ice blocks and stamping out the thing. And I saw this curly-haired guy at the side of the venue handing a sticker to Sarah Burke, and it was a Newschoolers sticker.
Wow!
And so I was too nervous to talk to Sarah, but then this guy with the Newschoolers stickers, I was like, "Hey, are you one of the Newschoolers guys?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm Harvey." And then I found out he knew the same crew, and I knew these guys, and we ended up hanging out, and that kind of is where that spawned off.
Very neat. Random story about Sarah Burke. So Momentum Ski Camp, I believe you know that. I went to Momentum for 2 summers when I was in high school. I did the mogul camp. And
Nice.
my first time doing the water ramps at Momentum or in Whistler, I needed a parent or guardian signature. And Sarah Burke signed as my parent or guardian.
Oh man, yeah.
How cool is that?
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a, she was such a loss to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, she was the greatest person ever. I mean, everyone's just got such an incredible story about her, Momentum. I was actually I worked at High North for a number of years, so we were across the lane, probably throwing snowballs at you guys.
Yeah. You had to take the same lift up though.
Yeah, Showcase T-Bar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we go back to Newschoolers. What were people talking about? Like, so 1999 and then the early 2000s, I mean, the conversations are pretty different back then. Like, how did people use this, and then how did it develop as time went on?
I mean, the funny thing is that I think there's a lot more romancing of the past that goes on in people's minds, where the conversations, there's different things you're saying, but realistically, it's a fairly similar type of thing where people all go out skiing on the weekend, and then during the week they're bored, and so they want to either go on the site and meet new friends or chat about skiing and sort of fill the time to the next weekend. And maybe they post a video, maybe they put up a couple of photos of what happened, and they tell that story of skiing with their friends, and that kind of extends to anyone. And I mean, the conversations have gotten much more advanced in terms of like the tricks that they're talking about, and there's way more people flowing through, whereas back in the day it was a much smaller community. But you can sort of think about that in relation to how that part of new school freestyle or skiing, or free skiing, I guess is called these days. I actually don't like that term.
Yeah, I don't know what the term is, to be completely honest.
It's the popular vernacular is free skiing, so that's the accepted thing. At the start, it was new school freestyle in order to differentiate between old freestyle and new freestyle. And that's where the word newschoolers.com came. But as the years progressed, we sort of went through that, like, some people don't like the word new school, and then I started calling it free skiing and free riding and freestyle and blah blah blah. I kind of went through a bunch of things, and it's basically sort of settled in on free skiing, especially with the the Olympics and all that. That that was the word that went out to the world.
So what do you hate about it?
I don't know. I couldn't answer. I just honestly, I just something about it. It's like free skiing. Like what? In all honesty, Jay skis. Jay Leventhal. His motto is "It's just skiing," right? And personally, I think that one of the main problems that we face in skiing is such hyper fragmentation. If you look at snowboarding as an example, a snowboarder is a snowboarder, maybe there's a couple of guys that race, but they're still a snowboarder. There's, a big mountain snowboarder is just a snowboarder that does something different. They have this more sort of unifying mindset, and now I understand in skiing that we've been fragmented for so long, a racer, a, big mountain freestyler, but it's just, I feel it's too bad that we feel so separated from other skiers that we are so diametrically like, oh my God, you're a racer. I can't even possibly talk to you. You're not my people, So it's kind of part of that where I just think that we've just gone right back down the path of, segmenting so much that just, coming up with a new word. It's like, it's in skiing.
That's so true. Yeah, there is. I think maybe part of it is because you can do so much more. In my opinion, you can do so much more on skis than you can on a snowboard. But I do agree that there is this hyper fragmentation.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean there are a lot, like, you can't do moguls on a snowboard. That's just not. Well, I guess you can. I mean, there's a lot of guys. No, I mean not like ripping a zipper line with like straight 203s on, right? But there is a lot of differentiation. I like at the company that owns Newschoolers, I get to hang out with the guys from Transworld Snowboarding and Snowboarder Magazine because it's both owned by the same company, and it's just there's a really, I don't know, there's just a more unifying vibe. Like in my days, I used to work in the terrain park. I hung out with a lot of snowboarders as well, and you just sort of see like, guys look at Jeremy Jones, he's rad, he does crazy stuff, that's amazing, but then some street snowboarder, the guys who are out there in the mountains don't go, oh, that stupid little street snowboarder or that little park rat, like, oh my God, I cannot possibly associate myself with him, right? It's like, it's just like, hey, bro, cool, you're in the mountains, you're into snowboarding, that's rad, Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. I just wanted to go back to what you said earlier there about romanticizing the past, and I totally agree with that. People always say like the good old days and things like that, and we always reflect so positively on what's happened a while ago. And like 20 years from now, we're going to look back on the time this day and we're going to say, wow, those were great days. But right now we're saying, oh, everything's so messed up, Yeah,
and it's not. Like, one, I mean, in my own frame of reference, having actually been, I think it's my 11th year at Newschoolers now, like, I've gotten to see these transitions, and everyone says, oh, the old days were so much better. It's like, no, dude, they weren't. I mean, they were different for sure, but it's not very much different from today. And applying that logic to the meta world, I read this book called The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. And he goes through how we should all actually be optimistic about the future, because if you look at the data from the past, in fact, every single day that we're on this earth, human life just gets better and better and better. And that often, human perseverance basically solves our meta problems, but the media never writes about it. So everybody sits there and says, oh my God, the past was so much better.
I like that. The Rational Optimist.
Yeah.
That's a good book recommendation.
Yeah, it's a positive read. It's like a little light, and he kind of, rehashes a couple of points. But one of the examples is like acid rain, right? Like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the hype of acid rain in like the 80s, right? Everywhere was, oh my God, acid rain, it's going to destroy the planet. We're dead. We're all going to die. That's all you could read about. And then it went silent. And if you actually look back at the historical facts, in fact, the acid rain ended up being a fertilizer for the world's forests. But there's no retraction article printed because it doesn't sell newspapers.
Right. Well, for the listeners, we have a deal with Audible.com where we get paid if you get a free audiobook. I'm not sure if The Rational Optimist is on there. I'll check and throw it on your Meister profile page, Doug, on our website, MTNmeister.com. And it is there, The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. To get that audiobook for free, go to our website, MTNmeister.com, under the deal section. If you use that link, you'll get a free audiobook, and you'll help support us financially. So thanks for that. You're listening to Mountain Meister, and this is our interview with Doug Bishop, the general manager of Newschoolers.com, one of the most popular online communities in all of skiing. I want to talk about the ski industry in the future, since you are such an expert. You're an aspiring pro skier. Now you deal with many aspiring and professional skiers. What's your take on, say, I'm sure, I don't know exactly what the data says, but I'm sure that the number of people pursuing a life of a pro skier is growing, right?
Yeah. Okay. I'm using anecdotal evidence here.
Yeah,
it's in a peer-reviewed study, but yes, I mean there is definitely people vying for it, and there is a path that you can follow.
And is the demand growing as well as the supply? So the demand for pro skiers, is that growing as fast as the supply is growing?
No, especially if you look at the supply versus demand of easily accessible media and channels to promote yourself.
Yeah.
So, that's a very tricky sort of double-edged sword that an athlete faces today where, it's super easy to get a video camera and to, cut together and edit on a nice computer and, throw it out into the world, whether it's through, Facebook or promoting yourself on Snapchat or posting it on Newschoolers or YouTube or, these million other ways. But, that's made it that there are so many people who are out there that are good that are able to actually build a following. So I know that, like, realistically, when you look at the field of athletes, 2% of them are making a really good living. Everybody else is making nothing.
So how are they doing it?
Rich parents? No. I mean, there's a combination of factors. Like sometimes, the bottom line is that people are able to get a start because they have a good base from their family. They have, access to skiing. They have a chalet. They can get it started. They can get a camera for Christmas and a MacBook Pro and edit stuff, stuff together. As well, it's a bit of an over exaggeration to say that there's nothing. I mean, there is money out there. This is a functional industry. It's not the biggest industry in the world, sure, but there's a lot of wealthy people out there who, like to ski as a hobby, and they will spend real deal money on product. And, the athletes are an aspirational dream for them, if you will. And so companies will spend money. You've got to hustle. You've got to get your act together. You've got to, make sure that you're professional. But you can string enough stuff together. You maybe, a lot of these guys aren't going to end up buying a house on this money or retiring on it. But hey, string a couple things together, you have a couple of great years skiing, and perhaps you can, make enough connections to get yourself a job in the industry when your, knee blows out or whatever.
It's a weird contrast between the kind of our typical American sports, because skiing is just so incredibly expensive. I mean, that's the reality. And the professionals, relative to other professional athletes, don't make nearly as much money, whereas a lot of other sports are much cheaper to pursue, yet the professionals make a ton of money.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, I wonder. Well, you know what? I guarantee you, one of the things that happens there is the scale of viewership, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so half the time skiing isn't actually a sport; it's more of like an art. You're getting photographed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you got a much smaller audience, so going into Ford and saying, hey, wow, we've got 100,000 people looking at this stuff. Ford's like, don't even. You wasted my time by breathing in the air in my office, whereas a mass appeal sport can actually get those corporate dollars. But I mean, the flip side of that, because you have so many skiers saying, oh my God, I want to break out of this industry and, get into the real world and make the real money. I mean, the real world is cold and harsh and horrible and unforgiving, and there's lots of competition, whereas inside of what we've got, even though it's a very niche thing and there's even a small portion of people doing it, it is a functional, passionate industry. So you say, okay, I know I'm not going to make the big bucks here. There's no Lamborghinis in my future. That's fine. You can make a nice little existence for yourself that's happy and fun. And there's enough money flowing around that if you hustle it, that you can make it happen. Yeah,
well put. I was looking at the most expensive sports out there just to get a kind of perception. This is something that I do. It says the most expensive sport or sporting event is the Whitianga Festival of Speed. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but it's in New Zealand, and it features multiple sports centered around speed. It says the event includes a helicopter race, an offshore powerboat race, jet skiing racing, a rally car versus helicopter racing, and parachute swooping, among other events.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's got it.
Yeah, if you need a helicopter, it's probably going to be an expensive sport.
Well, I mean, in skiing, you need a helicopter.
That's true. Good point.
It's actually, I mean, it's, it is funny in terms of money. Like if you start really racking it up, you think about, what you've got to be a 10-year-old skier. You've got, probably $3,000 to $4,000 worth of gear minimum, head to toe. You've got to have, a chalet. You got a truck big enough to carry everybody. I mean,
ski lessons. I remember my dad told me this story. There's this guy, he was cat skiing with his son. And the driver of the snowcat and the father were like watching the son go down, and he does some sort of crazy jump, lands it, and the cat driver says to the dad, wow, your son is a phenomenal skier. And the dad's response was that's what $400,000 will buy you.
Oh yeah. That does happen. I mean, and there's other ways to do it, right? Like you can, again, I mean, you can make it happen if you hustle and you get into a mountain town or whatever. But that is the other side of it. It's a very expensive sport.
Well, speaking of buying things, we get a gear recommendation from every person that comes on the show. Mr. Bishop, as they call you, tell our listeners something or two things that they have to have.
Okay. So the first one, we'll go with a ski. And something that I feel we've wronged at with media is telling everybody that they need multiple pairs of skis, because like I've ridden like the super floppy Hellbents or I forget what they're called, the Powabungas now from K2. 2 pow days a year, those are the most incredible skis you have ever had on your feet. 98% of the time, it's horrible. So the all mountain category is something that's become very popular, and I think that there's a lot of great brands out there that are doing a lot of great things. Personally, I was out at Powder Week last year, and I just hang out and ski around, and I was hustling clients for advertising, but skiing Jackson Hole is not a bad place to do that. And I tried from a new company called Batalla Skis. Battaglia is how it's pronounced, Batalla. And they've got an all-mountain twin, and I think that's about somewhere between like 104 and 108 underfoot. It's got a 17-meter carving radius, so it actually it'll hook because I'm an old slalom racer, so I still really like something that'll set some springy edge on it. It's nice and durable, got a great shape to it. So the Batalla All Mountain Twin, I think, is probably one of the ones I'm pressing these days.
Nice, I like that.
Yeah, and then the second, I think it was Rachel that was on your show. That suggested Smith eyewear. Yep. I used to ride for Smith, like way back in the day, and I've just kind of always been on it. I've tried a lot of different goggles, a lot of different eyewear too, and same as glasses. Smith just makes like for the kind of combination of a decent-ish price. It's a high-end, it's a high-end product. It's not a low-end product, so it's going to cost you some money. But, price, fashion, and quality, they just hit a real sweet spot in there. And there is nothing like having quality eyewear to make your day on the mountains better.
Very great. For the listeners, check out those recommendations on our website, MTNmeister.com, as well as a quote from Doug and other highlights from today's episode. Finally, the last question we like to ask is, who would you like to see as the next Mountain Meister? You're today's Mountain Meister. Who's the next one?
Okay, I'm going to give two. I got to give two suggestions because it depends what direction you want to go in. If you want to get somebody who's like another industry type of guy and has like a really, really, really fascinating perspective, Jason Leventhal, doing J Skis now, founded Line Skis. He is an incredibly interesting individual and a wealth of knowledge about absolutely everything, extremely opinionated as well. So I've always enjoyed discourse with him. Now, on the mountain side of things, like an athlete, Pep Fujas is a character and a half, and he has had such an interesting life and such an interesting growth. And he's out there in the mountains, still doing his thing, still killing it. He's a smart guy, and he has a very, very interesting background. So those, depending on your angle, I'd say would be my two.
Well, we might see both of them in the future. Jay and Pep, for the listeners, keep an eye out, or get an ear out, I should say, for those on a future episode of Mountain Meister. Doug Bishop, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Hey, no problem at all. I had a great time.
I hope everybody enjoyed that episode with Doug Bishop, General Manager of Newschoolers.com. Thanks to one of our sponsors who made this episode possible. It's the DeLorme InReach Explorer, the world's only satellite communicator with built-in navigation. Send and receive text messages, create waypoints, and find your way back from anywhere in the world. For $35 off of your purchase, go to inreachdelorme.com and use the code Meister at checkout. One place where you could be using an InReach Explorer is on Mount Langley in the Southern Sierra. I'm doing a climb with Summit for Someone there. If you're interested in joining, shoot me an email, ben@MTNmeister.com. Thanks for listening to another episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy doing the rest of whatever you're doing right this very second as you listen to my voice. I'm Ben Shank. You've been listening to